American Cowboy. If you would please take a seat, if we could have our honorees take a seat at this time. It's a beautiful Colorado morning, and we're very pleased to have everyone here this morning in celebration of this induction ceremony, which will take place in a few moments. Before we get started with the program, I want to say hello to the folks from my hometown that are here, Spanish Fork, Utah. Glad to have you here. Please stand. Dave and Spencer will sing our national anthems.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Native land, true patriot love, in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. Mike Spencer will offer our prayer.
We just don't want to forget that all good gifts come from above, as it states in your word. And we thank you for the gifts that you've given us and you've given these men to compete in a sport this great. Lord, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that you give us confidence and contentment to be wherever we are, in every situation, Lord. Just be with us this morning and help us to keep our foundation and our focus on your precious Son, Jesus Christ, in whose name we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. For assistance that we're able to do many of the things that we do. Our most senior member is Mr. Ed Hahn, and he's 93 years old, and we're very pleased to have him here with us today. If you'll hold your applause, and well, I'll just go through the names. Thank you. Mr. John Burke, Mr. Eldon Evans, Harry Vold and his wife Karen, Bob Thane and his wife Marilyn. Bud Shepard and his wife Barbara, Ken Oakes and wife Dee, Leo Ververs and his wife Elsie, T.J. Walter and his wife Deb, Commissioner Louis Cryer and his wife Sandy Cryer. And we have a special guest from the PRCA board, Lee McKenzie, with us today. A big hand for these gentlemen, please. As you know, an activity such as this takes a tremendous amount of pre-planning, hard work, and on the day execution to make it an outstanding event, which it needs to be for the great people who will be honored today. My staff does this work. The key person is Pat Florence. She is our curator and our assistant director. Pat, thank you for a great job. Other members of my staff that I'd like to thank are Kathy Stinchcomb, Mary Ann Pemberton, Sue Flair, Jim Gallagher, been associated with rodeo for many, many years. He is, over 20 years, he has been a neighbor to Salinas Rodeo. When he isn't putting on his own rodeos, he has 1 week a month, or 1 week during the summer that I understand that he's got open, and that's when he goes over to Salinas and watches their rodeo. He served as the co-commissioner of the PRCA while searching for the present commissioner. He is in his third term as the chairman of the board of the PRCA. Help me welcome Mr. Bob Thane.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate the opportunity today to induct a rodeo committee like Salinas. Being there to my hometown rodeo is really an honor. The California Rodeo, as they pronounce it, Salinas, is one of the greatest outdoor rodeos in the world. The California Rodeo celebrated its 82nd anniversary this year. Since 1911, they have attracted the top cowboys and cowgirls who compete for some of the largest prize money in the PRCA circuit. Big week at the California Rodeo passes down a tradition in the truest sense of the word by bringing back to life elements of the Old West for all people there to enjoy. It's with real pleasure I'd like to introduce Mr. Walt Cameron, the president of the Salinas Rodeo, who will be up here to accept the plaque inducting Salinas to California Rodeo.
Thank you, Bob. This is a real honor for Salinas. I got 52 directors, 120 advisory directors, and 750 volunteer committee people that are going to be proud of this. I'd like to thank the selection committee, the PRCA, the Hall of Fame for this honor. It's a little more special because we're going in with Johnny Schneider, who was a big part of our rodeo for years. Okay. Thank you again. Come to Salinas, third week in July. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you very much. The next person carries the burden of rodeo, the future of rodeo, on his shoulders. If you can imagine dealing with 10,000 PRCA members trying to satisfy their various needs, dealing with 800 some odd rodeo committees who each have a volunteer cadre of probably 100. There's a lot of different personalities to use. Affecting a staff of over 75 here at the national headquarters. He serves as the president and chairman of the board of the ProRodeo Hall of Fame, the chairman of the Justin Cowboy Crisis Fund, of the president of PRCA Properties. He's again a multi-talented individual who the future of rodeo rests on his shoulders. He's doing a very admirable job, as I think you would all agree. Let's welcome Commissioner Louis A. Cryer.
Thank
Thank you, Mike, and welcome everyone. We're so pleased that you're with us today on this special occasion. There are a few times in a person's life when they receive these kinds of acclaim, and when one is honored by one's peers, I personally believe it always takes on a special meaning. For those who have competed in the arena and are being acknowledged here today, for them and their families, we congratulate them, and we are on with the ceremonies as you are here to see today. We have, on behalf of the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association Board of Directors and the Hall of Fame and its Board of Trustees, it's my honor to welcome you here today. The Hall of Fame, as I mentioned last night to the inductees and their families in our special dinner for those in attendance, the Hall of Fame itself, if you would imagine this, is a chamber of memories. It is certainly an acknowledgement of a career of successes. There is no greater honor, as I mentioned to you before, than that of being honored by one's peers, because those are the ones that know in their hearts who they competed against and were challenged by and acknowledged their accomplishments and their championships. We are here today to honor those as you have seen them listed in your program. The first to be honored will be Johnny Schneider, bull riding. To present and make the introduction remarks, Randy Whitty. Randy?
Johnny Schneider, bull rider. As Will Rogers used to say, all I know I read in the newspapers. Well, I didn't know Mr. Johnny Schneider personally, unfortunately, because I wish I would have. But I've read about him. And everything I've read pointed to a man who was very interesting and very capable, actually as an all-around cowboy, and just a real whiz as a bull rider. Johnny Schneider was born in 1904, ranch raised. He called Livermore, California home. He rodeoed in the 1920s and 30s, truly the pioneering era of rodeo as we know it today. And gosh, he could do it all. Rode broncs and bulls, roped calves, roped steers, bulldogged. Gosh, he was a heck of a racehorse rider. He picked up a lot of extra money in that. Even in 1936, he won the championship in the steer decorating event. In 1929 and 30, Johnny Schneider was world champion bull rider. He tied for that title again in 1932. And in 1931, Johnny Schneider was world champion all-around cowboy. He joined a group of American cowboys and cowgirls who went to Australia for a lengthy tour to demonstrate rodeo to the folks down there. Well, as we all know, rodeo is thriving in Australia today, and every year we see a pretty good contingent of Australian cowboys and cowgirls over here winning their share of the money at our rodeos. He made a similar tour to the Hawaiian Islands in 1939. And gosh, what a trip that must have been. Andy Urigi sent a boatload of livestock out across the Pacific, and the contestants followed. They arrived about a week later, and by all accounts it was a very successful rodeo, the very first one produced in Hawaii. And I've seen some of the newspaper clippings, and the coverage was just outstanding. It was sports-like coverage of the rodeo events day by day. Johnny Schneider was a part of that. He was truly a pioneer. When he retired from the rodeo arena, he became deputy livestock inspector for the state of California. He held this post for 20 years. And when he retired, then Governor Ronald Reagan praised Johnny Schneider, offered many words of gratitude and thanks for a job well done. So we see a man, Johnny Schneider, who had a very interesting rodeo career, a very successful career, and then went on to do other things associated with the livestock business. He was truly a man of the West, great rodeo cowboy, and it is very fitting that Johnny Schneider be a part of this wonderful Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. The plaque shall read, Johnny Schneider, bull rider. Schneider had the soul of a poet and the heart of a cowboy. He began rodeoing in 1923 and quickly established a reputation as one of the most versatile performers around. He competed in bull riding, saddle bronc, bareback, steer and calf roping, and steer decorating, and was a consistent winner in Roman racing and Pony Express. Quote, I went to winning right away, placing in money 7 times in my first 9 shows. By the time the Depression set in, Snyder was earning a good living, carefully saving his money so that he could buy a ranch and some cattle. He retired from competition in 1940 to the ranch and became a highly respected brand inspector for the state of California. Quote, the best thing about rodeo was that it gave a lot of us a start in life. There weren't that many options back then for a fellow trying to make it. Born in Stockton, California in 1904, he passed away in 1982. RAA World Champion all-around 1931, RAA Champion Bull Rider in 1929, and 1930, 1932 it was a tie. RAA Steer Decorating Champion 1931, 32, and 1936. Johnny Schneider, Bull Riding. To respond, Bernice Snyder on behalf of our inductee.
Thank you.
Make sure you take this little card with you.
Okay.
And step right up and speak right
All
into
right.
that. Thank you.
On behalf of Johnny Schneider and his family, John Schneider, his oldest son who is not present, Jimmy Schneider. Could you stand up, Jimmy? And his wife, Kathy. His daughter. On behalf of our family, I would like to thank the PRCA and the selecting committee for this great honor on behalf of Johnny Schneider. Was near the little town of Brentwood in 1923. We were headed for the rodeo, another kid and me. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, the 2nd day of July. I thought I'd go to Livermore. A bucking horse I'd try. I didn't look much like a cowboy. I'd been working on a farm. I had no hat or chaps or boots, but my saddle was a charm. I borrowed a pair of rusty spurs from another country lad. I told him he had better come along. I might not do so bad. So we saddled up a work team, a little bay and brown, and started out for Livermore, the celebrating town. We got to town quite early. Then when our horses had their care, we thought we would have a look around to see what all was there. So we walked all around the village, up the street, and down. I bet there was 100 cowboys scattered about the town, wearing broad-brimmed hats, fancy boots, and shirts and hats. Some wore silver-mounted spurs. Others carried squirts. Whenever we met a cowboy, whether he was short or tall, my little friend would whisper, John, you got no chance at all. But I went down to headquarters, signed up, and drew a mount that had bucked off more good riders than what some cowboys could count. The next day at the roundup, when it came my turn to ride, the cowboys helped each other, but for me, they stood aside. And when I cinched my saddle, the boys just scattered round to see the little stranger come tumbling to the ground. But I fooled all of these punchers. when the snub man jerked the blind and the old mare went to bucking and kicking high behind, those rusty spurs were raking the hair off of her side. I tell you, I was scratching that old mare high and wide. I'll not have to say what happened or what the judges said, but we had a celebration before we went to bed. Now, there is one thing that I am sure. When I go to Livermore, the folks all know this cowboy. I'm a stranger there no more.
Contractor. Introduction remarks by Hall of Famer Clint Johnson.
Miss, how are you, sir?
I'm happy you made it, sir. We were a little worried that you were not going to get here.
Well, I'm up to old tricks. I missed the grand entry, but I'm here for the bareback riding. We had a little problem, but we made it. You know, when I look at the Snyder family and guys like Clint and Copenhaber that are going to be inducted, and Lewis Feild, of course, I think about a story that's going around eastern Oklahoma right now. It seems there was a Mexican fella and a Frenchman and a lawyer and kind of an eastern Oklahoma redneck, kind of a bulldog or team roper cross, that were shooting skeet, and they took their favorite libation with them. And they had to each shoot a clay pigeon, take a drink, and shoot another pigeon, take a drink, and along the shank of the afternoon they ran out of libation. The Frenchman said, well, I got one more shot. He reached down and got his Chardonnay vintage 1937 bottle and threw it up, blasted it in a million pieces, and said, "Vive la France, Charles de Gaulle lives." The Mexican looked all around, reached down and got his Jose Cuervo bottle and threw it up, blasted it, said, "Viva Zapata, Pancho Villa lives." Old redneck bulldog or team roper type fella looked all around, got his Coors can, threw it up in the air, shot the lawyer between the eyes, and said, "Boys, it don't get any better than this, does it?" And it really doesn't. I'm always in awe when I come here, and it never dawns on me what this means to all of the inductees until you go home and you start talking about it. And it falls my lot this morning not to tell you about the Velvet Fog, Mel Torme. I go to the other end of the spectrum for the roaring avalanche from the North Country, Reg Kessler. Reg is a guy whose accomplishments would fill an encyclopedia, and a man that has worn every pair of boots that a rodeo person can wear, from a contestant to a stock contractor to a rancher. And his life is almost a Horatio Alger story. He was born in the dead of a blizzard. They said it was 20 below when he was born that night. And I've heard more than one Bronc rider, Clint, say, "I wish they'd have hung him out for 45 minutes after that happened," but they didn't. He rode to school 10 miles horseback to get his education in a one-room school. Then went to Olds Community College up there and played hockey and boxed. A lot of people don't know, but he also was a pretty good pool shark when he was a young fella, and they tell me up in Canada before he started winning, he hustled pool pretty good. He started in the rodeo business in the 50s, but he had already made a great record as a contestant. He had won the all-around title of Canada 3 times. He was a bareback rider and a bronc rider and a steer decorator and a bulldogger and a calf roper. He did it all. He's already been inducted into the Raymond Alberta Sports Hall of Fame, the Canadian Rodeo Hall of Fame, the Alberta All Sports Hall of Fame, a board member of our PRCA and of the Hall, a great leader in the Canadian Historical Association. And in 1988, he and his good wife Liz were honored by their home community of Missoula, Montana for them being outstanding citizens. But I guess the most important facet we have in the rodeo business, and being an old-time event man, it's kind of hard to say, and maybe Hugh Bennett will go along with me. Anybody that wants to can get decent roping cattle and decent roping calves, and anybody down in my country can get good bulls. But the backbone of the rodeo business is a bucking horse man. That's still what people come to see. And Reg Kessler epitomizes a bucking horse man. And they tell a story in the early 50s when he was just starting and was just putting together some great horses, that the late Leo Kramer came by and tried to buy all of them. And Reg needed the money, but he wouldn't sell them. And that kind of set the tone for this man's involvement in the rodeo business. And you look at the great horses that he had. I personally think Moonshine was one of the most underrated bareback horses that ever was. Moonshine won plaques the first year we gave him here and the first year the Canadians gave him. One of the greatest bareback horses and bucked for many years. But of course there was one horse in his outfit, one mare. This fella's a friend of mine. We'll go ahead. He comes through every day about this time. He's making up for lost time right now. I'll just wait a minute. We're in no hurry. I thought the commissioner could control anything, and I was wrong. But you talk about great bareback horses, and the name Three Bars comes to mind. And Three Bars won plaques in 3 decades, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. And I remember seeing Three Bars buck Jackie Rideoff at the national finals in Oklahoma City, probably as high and as hard as any man ever bucked off a bucking horse. And even today, they got some good ones coming on. Billy Lay won the $50,000 winner-take-all at Calgary a year ago on one of his new mares. And this Three Bars went ahead and produced some great bucking horses, as you know. Then you get into Saddle Broncs, and I go back and I think of Rodeo News, and the Highlands wrote songs about that horse. And you think about the horses like the Ace of Spades, the outstanding bucking horse in Canada in the 80s. And you think about Hat Rack and Short Crop and Not In and Grub Stake. And I could go on and on talking about this man's horses and what he's done. But what I like to remember about Reg Kessler are the good times that we had. Not very many announcers have gotten to announce Raymond, Alberta. And if you ain't never announced Raymond, Alberta, you have not lived. There's about 712 people there, and they have a parade that lasts 45 minutes. There'll be 15 acres of fried chicken in everybody's yard after the parade at 11 o'clock. Then you go down and you crack the gates open at 1:30. They have 2 sections of everything. Kessler had 3 studs climb out of the chute and get on the track that day as an extra added attraction. Then after they have 2 sections of everything, they shut down for about 30 minutes. Everybody has a drink, and they start again and do the same darn thing again. About 7:30, 8 o'clock, you're through. Well, I'm up there about 15 years ago, and I've got to be in Spooner, Wisconsin the next day. I've forgotten how I got up there. Some sun went down that evening I've ever seen in my whole life before or since. Greg had to go somewhere else. One of his hired men had a broken leg, and then there was me. Well, I took my tie off, and the Penns and Raymond had seen better days. And we had to take some of the gates off to make a little, you know, kind of shut up an alley. And we were cutting these goddamn horses 4 ways. Finally got ready to go, and it don't get dark up there till, good Lord, I don't know, 10:30, 11 o'clock. So it was about 9:45 or 10. Now, we hadn't done anything like stopping for a cheeseburger, nothing at all like that. Kessler was hollering at all of us. So we get in this liner, and we get the coots. That liner never made over 28 miles an hour any of the time, and boy, we'd get up to about 40 in those hills, and then so we could make the next one. And Reg decided that something was wrong with the gas line. Well, the rodeo producer has to wear a lot of boots. He has to do a lot of things, you know. He's got to be able to flank and understand a bucking horse and scream at the bronc riders and the team ropers and everything. And he fancied himself a mechanic. So he takes off his shirt, he crawls under this goddamn liner. We're there at Coots. And boy, Coots is a great place to be at 10:30 at night. It is very good. Las Vegas ain't got nothing on it. So he crawls under and he goes blowing on this line, and pretty soon that gas comes loose. And Old Faithful never guys, if that's what a guy does, does the guys are guys? Well, that's what his deal did. And he's completely soaked with gasoline. God, he smelled bad. And we got in. He finally got me on up to Great Falls, and by that time it was 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I had a 7 o'clock flight to catch. So I put my head down on my suitcase and give a boy that's working there a couple of dollars. Said, wake me up about 6 o'clock so I can get some coffee. And I got on the schooner, so I left the get out on him. He's standing there as good as he's ever going to stand, on over to brag on the stock a little bit, Bob Barnes. So I had a great July run that year. The good things you remember about Reg Kessler. The years the finals were at Oklahoma City, and this is an inside deal, and it's a sweet thing. Our boy was growing up then. Bart was, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 along in there, and 12. Reg would cut a Christmas tree every year and bring it down with his stock. Then we would take that Christmas tree home from Missoula to Oklahoma City to Chelsea, and that was our Christmas tree for a number of years. And it became a family tradition. And you remember little things. You remember little things like this. One year at Medicine Hat, he's out there grinning during the grand entry. Well, he knows everybody up there. He's born right out in that country, waving to everybody, and he looks in the chutes, and they've loaded the saddle broncs. And there he is. The grand entry's about over. Reg comes completely untrained, and he does go to hollering and screaming at all these people. June Ivory's secretary, and June, also is a very quiet, retiring person. She reaches down, Reg, will you do me a favor? Yes, by God, I'll do you a favor. What do you want? She said, would you bring me a sandwich? And then I cannot tell you what he said then. There ain't no way. Dillon, Montana, one year, Butch Kirby told me this story yesterday morning over a cup of coffee. Some bronc had some local kid completely squashed. The horse had been upside down 3 or 4 times. Finally, Reg comes by and said, get out of there, boy. You're going to starve him to death in there. And the boy just nodded, and of course he went down at the end of the gate, and Reg said, well, it worked, didn't it, to no one in particular. A bucking horse man is a man that is not a jealous man. He's a man that will recognize other good bucking horses. Men like Reg Kessler have been the backbone of our business on both sides, starting his great career in the 50s. And he's been at places like Medicine Hat and Tabor and those places for 40 years. He's been at Dillon for over 30 years. He's got to be doing something right. And I'd like to close by telling you a great tribute he said to no one in particular about a bucking horse. Years ago, they brought Majorino to the finals, and Majorino was at his peak then. And after he'd bucked somebody off on Tuesday or Wednesday, they decided to put him in the Sunday afternoon performance. And in those days, they built a scaffold behind the announcer stand for our camera placement, and that was for a local televised performance or two. And that was the only place Reg could find to see the riding. And he's about 8 feet behind the announcer stand on this scaffold, maybe 6 feet from me. Larry Mahan drew Majorino. Majorino took a run at him, and as late feet tooth would say, when he turned back, you could have drawn your will on his side, and there laid Mahan. And to no one in particular, Reg Kessler, in that soft voice of his, said he's a bucking SOB, ain't he? Now, I thought that was a great tribute. Here is a horse that he didn't own, a horse that he would like to have owned at that time. He knew he didn't have a chance to get him, but he paid tribute to this. So this is my favorite bucking horse man, a man that has done everything legal to make a living, including running a backhoe in Texas a few years ago, a great contestant, a man that has given of himself, and that's how you judge someone in our business. Do you put something back in it? Yes, Reg Kessler's put something back in it. And it's indeed an honor to offer this good man's name as an inductee into this hallowed shrine. Thank you very much.
The plaque shall read, Reg Kessler, stock contractor. Kessler has been known for almost half a century as a top-notch stock contractor and rodeo producer. Over the years, a large number of his animals have been chosen as top bucking stock at the National Finals Rodeo, the Canadian Finals, and the Montana State Finals. He went into the stock contracting because he felt the country was being depleted of stock needed for rodeos. Now, many of his top stock come from his extensive breeding program, utilizing 5 lines of famous bucking horses. Rodeo began for Kessler in the 1940s as a Canadian contestant. He entered saddle bronc, bareback, bull riding, calf roping, steer wrestling, and team roping, never seeming to favor one event over the other. By 1950, he had turned to the production side of rodeo. Kessler's involvement in all aspects of rodeo won him the 1975 Canadian Rodeo Cowboys Association Dyson Rivet Memorial Award for outstanding contributions to the sport. As a contestant, stock contractor, and association board member on both sides of the border, Kessler feels he has had the opportunity to present and help maintain the Western way of life. Born in Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada in 1919, Canadian Rodeo Cowboys Association all-around champion 1948, 51 and 1953, Canadian Rodeo Cowboys Association Board of Directors 1948 through 56, 1975 through 1980, and PRCA Board of Directors 1984 through 1989. Reg Kessler, stock contractor.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Your plaque, and here's your card.
Thank you.
Right into it, sir, because they won't hear you. And
He want, you know, I never ever heard of that before. He said they want to hear you. He said they won't be able to if you don't talk into this mic. However, thank you, Lou. You know, the first thing I'd like to do, and I think it only falls as the right thing to do as far as I'm concerned, and that is to have my family that is here stand up, please. You know, there's a lot of things going on in the rodeo business, but there isn't too many things that would have gone in the rodeo business for me if it hadn't been for the PRCA, the CPRA, and all those affiliates. I hate and hesitate to think about what would have been the life of Reg Kessler if it hadn't been for rodeo. You know, you get a lot of praise and you get a lot of compliments, but let me tell you something. It's pretty easy to do the things you like. If this damn thing would quit shaking, I'd be all right. But anyway, I'd just like to say that it's been a pleasure to work with as many people as I have. Mention has been made of the boards I've been on and the people I've worked with, and it's been a pleasure to be associated with those people. You know, when I think back about the rodeo committees that I've been associated with, as far south as Houston, Texas, as far east as Kissimmee, Florida, and the World's Fair in Quebec, as far west as Vancouver and Seattle and some of those places. And I don't mean to offend anyone when I've missed a few rodeos that I haven't mentioned. But it's always been a pleasure for me to be there. A lot of people said it didn't sound like it. Nevertheless, that don't matter to me. It was a pleasure for me to be there. And it's also been a pleasure over the years to have as many friends as you have, and have as many friends in different locales as you have. You know, I don't know, you can have all the money in the world, if you don't have any friends, you're in trouble. And I'm mighty proud of my friends. I just want to say one or two more things and get off of here before people think I'm going to stay all day. I want to thank this cowboy organization here for recognizing the stock contractors. You know, if those guys weren't alcoholics, so to speak, there wouldn't be any rodeos. You know, when I think about the remuneration over the years for putting on rodeos, I'm not crying about it. I'm happy that I was there. But at the same time, I think there's been a lot lacking, but I can see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and people are starting to recognize the fact that a stock contractor does have expenses. And you know, there's a lot of people who never thought about that. However, I'd just like to say again that I'm very honored and very pleased to be inducted into the Hall. I think it's one of the greatest accomplishments of the rodeo business. And like I say again, thanks to everybody.
Don't forget your card now. The next inductee, Deb Copenhaver, Saddle Bronc. Introduction remarks, Deborah Copenhaver, Fellows.
So they can hear you, okay?
Thanks. It's an honor for me, as Dad's oldest child, to speak on behalf of our whole family. Cheryl Copenhaver, Jeff Copenhaver, my brother, he was world's champion calf roper in 1975. Guy Copenhaver, my brother, and his wife Felicia. Kelly Hurt and my brother-in-law Fred Hurt. Matt Copenhaver, my brother, and his wife Gina. My husband Fred Fellows. And all of my dad's grandbabies, Fabi, Shandy, Maddie, and FP. I'd like to reflect on Dad's past as I saw it growing up. This is a little different perspective than we've heard today. I seldom remember a time growing up when Dad was home that we didn't have one or more of his friends staying at our place. Some of these cowboys were down on their luck. As I remember, Bud Linderman made his last stop at our house when I was a little girl that's probably 9 years old. He went on, and within a week, I think he died. Many of the Bronc riders were learning to ride, and they'd travel with Daddy for the season. Some of these were Bert France and his wife. He was married at the time, and his wife is here, Brenda. Lyle Smith, Bobby Robinson, Winston Bruce, and the list goes on. A lot of Canadian cowboys. Some of the names like Bill Linderman and Marty Woods and others just came and stayed between rodeos. The rodeo office was the first place we went in a town when I was a little girl. Dad was paying fees and checking out the draw. And hopefully, the rodeo office was the last place that we stopped at the end of the night. And we waited for the check. I could remember as a little kid playing on the lawn till very late at night because we needed the money to go on to the next one. I know for all of those years, the winnings that Dad made bought our ranch in Post Falls, Idaho. Mom tells of the year when Dad went to Madison Square Gardens on a $100 tourist flight, landed with $20 in his pocket, and rode the wild horse race there each night for $10 to pay for his stay while he was in New York City. As Badger Clark, the cowboy poet, put it in one of his poems, youth was in the saddle there with half a world to ride. After running at the world for so many years, in 1955, with the ranch payment due that fall, he went back to Madison Square Gardens again, but this year he won it. And on the way, he stopped at Denver, and that was one of the few years that they had the Denver Rodeo in the fall, and he won it too. And he went on and he won the world. As I was growing up, I remember we always had cattle. I remember helping him drive our horses, our team of horses, Bud and Pete, behind a skid to feed our cattle in the snow. Bud was named after Bud Linderman, and Pete was named after Pete Crump. Dad's interest in livestock continues today. It's only surpassed by his love for his horses. One of the pictures in our family album that I remember and is very special to me is Dad standing next to a 25-year-old bucking horse named Badger Mountain. He was owned by Leo Muma, the contractor in the Northwest. And in the picture, Dad has Jeff sitting on Badger Mountain's back. And even as old as those pictures are, you can see the tear in Dad's eyes. In the late 50s, with a truckload of Arizona range mares and a 19-year-old stud named Rain Cloud, Dad started raising quarter horses on the D-Bar-D ranch. In the years he continued to rodeo, he consistently scouted ranches and racetracks, eventually shipping stallions home to cross with our mares to raise running babies, running colts, running horses. Dad's pride and joy in his life, I'm sure, was owning King Leo Bar. Just last week, he called. It was early in the morning, and he called and he said, "Sis, I've got the neatest colt. His name is Almighty Pie. He's going to win the All-American in '94. His dream was that he'd win the All-American in '94. Daddy's gone from being a 12-year-old kid with virtually no family, being legged up on any rank horse that was at the bush tracks around his home, to becoming a world's champion, being a successful horse breeder, a rancher, and the founder of an excavation company for my two younger brothers, and most of all, for raising a very challenging family. Dream it and then go work hard to make it happen is the legacy that Dad will leave my family. Through the years, he's made friends all over the country. Jeff and I had a flat tire in the middle of New Mexico in 1976, and I think it was in the middle of the night. Well, I'm sure it was. Some local guy came by and gave us a hand, and he said, we introduced ourselves as Jeff and Debbie Copenhaver, and he says, "You're not Deb's kids, are you?" And then he went on, "Why, I remember," and this has happened to Jeff and I our whole lives. Today, he shares more than friendship with, he shares more than his friendship. He shares his convictions with his friends. He's burying many of his cronies now and speaks at their funerals. Casey's was one of them. Not long ago, he called my studio early in the morning and he said, "Sis, you've got to hear this song that I sang at somebody's funeral." I don't remember who it was. And at 7:30 in the morning, Dad sings in the phone, which anybody in the family knows he'll do easily. And he sang, "The place where I worship is the wide open spaces, touched by the hand of God, where the trees of the forest are like pipes of an organ, and the breeze plays an amen chord. The stars are like candles, and they light up the mountains, for the mountains are altars to God. In your heart, take a good look. If you'll follow the good book, you're sure to find your reward. The place where I worship is the wide open spaces, touched by the hand of God." I'd like to introduce my dad, Deb Copenhaver.
The plaque shall read, Deb Copenhaver, saddle bronc. Copenhaber, considered one of the greatest bronc riders to come out of the Pacific Northwest, was just a kid when he started his breaking horses and exercising racehorses. His rodeo career took a backseat to World War II when he enlisted in the Seabees at the age of 17. By 1948, Copenhaber was on a rodeo trail full-time. By the early 1950s, he was winning consistently. He won the big ones: Calgary in 53, 55, and 58, Madison Square Garden in 52 and 55, Pendleton in 54, Salinas in 52, Denver in 56, and Fort Worth in 1954. To win his 1955 title, Copenhaber traveled over 90,000 miles, both coasts, Canada, and as far south as San Antonio. One weekend, he chartered a plane and entered 7 rodeos in 5 states, 4 of which ran concurrently. Copenhaber's championships were due to his dedicated concentration to what it takes to be a good rider. He did his best to score the highest possible marking on every bronc he ever drew. Born Wilbur, Washington, 1925. RCA World Champion all-around 1955 and 1956. Inland Empire Sports Writers and Broadcasters Athlete of the Year in 1956. Deb Copenhaver, Saddle Bronc.
Leave that up there. Okay? Step right up on top of that so they can hear you.
Okay.
They want to hear everything you're going to say.
Good boy.
Okay?
Whew. What a great day. What a precious, precious moment. Debbie recognized the family. So I'm gonna ask some special friends that came down here to stand up. Walt and Joanne Horning from Spokane, and Cap and Georgia Underdog. Where are you, Cap? Hallelujah. Dear friends, I appreciate you being here. That's a true friend that'll come that far to hear me speak. Well, I really want to thank so many people, but first of all, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. He's in our family, and when he came, he brought all the love that one family can bear. Last night, I said to Louis Cryer, I said, do you ever think that Bill or Casey or Pruitt or any of the so-called founders, with any stretch of the imagination, would ever dream that it could be something of this magnitude, of this size? It is so beautiful, and I stand in awe at the accomplishments. And I think of this association, My Beautiful Life with Rodeo, like so many of those good ranches in the North Country that are passed on to the next generation. They take it, they care for it, they nurture it, and they build a fence, and they pass it on to the next generation. And likewise, with this great sport of rodeo, I think about Hugh Bennett sitting right there, and I said to Hugh, this reminds me of that very thing. Last night, Mike said to me, and we talked about Hugh, what a foundation rock that he has been for this organization. And it's men like him that did what they did, that passed it on down to that next generation, that makes it so beautiful. I thank God for my life in rodeo. I've had a life that unsurpassed. I truly wasn't a good student, and chances are, if it hadn't have been that God blessed me the ability to ride broncs, I'd have been driving somebody's bulldozer or punching somebody's cows or breaking somebody's horses. But through rodeo, something so beautiful, I've had the life that's just, everybody out there knows the feeling. And so we can all be thankful this day. And speaking not just for myself, speaking for my family, I like to think that over there in that foundation, there's a few sacks of cement with our name on it. To my friend up above here, I say literally, to old Cap, God bless you. I wished he could be here now. Many thanks to you all.
Beautifully treated. Don't forget your plaque now. Get your card. The lady will help you down.
Well, Clint, when Clem Dury's clipboard, I knew we were in trouble. Deborah, that was very beautiful. Deb, congratulations. Reg, you're right. She is shaking. Hang on, Casey. Don't let you shake her down. Ladies and gentlemen, the next honoree for the saddle bronc riding for 1992 is one of the greatest bronc riders of all time. This great hall would not stand in this great state if it weren't for our legendary heroes of rodeo. It certainly wouldn't be complete without the likes of 4 times world champion saddle bronc rider Clint Johnson. Clint was born and raised in Spearfish, South Dakota, and now makes his home with his lovely wife and son, Mindy and Ben, in Amarillo, Texas. You know, folks, buildings are made of sticks and stones. Champions are crowned with gold. Clint Johnson is filled with greatness, honor, kindness, and respect. He made his impact on rodeo in the arena as well as out. We came to Denver and we picked that gold buckle up. And we had us a good time. We go home and we get on that airplane. He sits here on this aisle and I sit right here and I'm looking over there, and little old Clint pulls his shirt tail out, kind of puts it over the top of his buckle, and he takes that seat belt and he puts her underneath that buckle for she don't scratch her. I'm watching him with great pride. You know, I'm swelling. I've got this opportunity to see this. So we'd get in the beer stand or somewhere amongst friends, and I'd kid old Clint. I'd show him your buckle, Clint. Shut up. Be quiet. Well, we was working some rodeos, Sykeston, Missouri, way off down through there, and we were going to kind of take it easy and go home. Joe Alexander said, "You two little twerps better enter them Northwest rodeos." So we drive all the way because Big Joe told us to. We get up there to one of them rodeos, and we get there about an hour early, and we get our rigging bags out and our saddles and everything. And they're starting to run the Broncs in, and I always kind of watched Clint. I wasn't sure where I was at, so I watched Clint make sure I was in the right place at the right time. Clint wasn't there. I looked around. Just a few minutes before Broncs come in, the old adrenaline got to flowing. Mother Nature called. Well, he'd done taken his PRCA card and his wallet and all his money and everything and put it in his rigging bag, and he had his spurs on. He's ready to go, you know, he's ready to ride. But the Diffie was out the gate over there on the other side of the fence. He goes over there, and they're running the Broncs in, and I'm putting my halter on. I'm kind of looking around, where's Clint? I look over there, and I see him over there. We got one of, you know, we do have, Reg, we got a good association. We've got some undertrained gate men every once in a while. And I see this guy, he's about 6'4". And I see Clint. Sitting there, and comes over there, and he runs, puts the shafts on, he jumped up there, and he said, "Finally had to do her." Well, I done seen it, and I said, "Do what?" Said I had to show him my buckle to get in. But Clint would never show that buckle. He doesn't need to. Folks, I've never seen a gold buckle walking around that the man wearing it didn't earn and deserve it. And each and every one of them will be and are honored. He said he rode broncs from Canada on south. He'd rode them in the wet. He'd rode them in the drought. He'd rode them where they was little, and he rode them where they was big. And that summarizes Clint Johnson. So on behalf of all the bronc riders, friends, families, and fans, it gives me the greatest pleasure to introduce to you our 1992 Saddle Bronc Riding inductee to the Cowboy Hall of Fame, the King, Clinton Richard Johnson.
The plaque shall read, Clint Johnson, Saddle Bronc. At the age of 10, Johnson began his career in 4-H rodeo. In high school, he qualified for the South Dakota High School Finals from 1971 to 1974, twice going to the National High School Finals. His quiet dedication to him has become much more than a vocation. It has become his future, his past, something he will hold fondly forever. Born Spearfish, South Dakota, 1956, PRCA World Champion Saddle Bronc 80, 87, 88, and 89. PRCA Board of Directors 1986 through 1989. Clint Johnson, Saddle Bronc.
Thanks, sir. Card for you and your plaque. Thank you. I'd like to thank God for this beautiful day first, and for making all this possible, every bit of it. But I'll pay you your $50 later. You did a fine job, thank you. I guess, to me, to measure the real honor that it is to be inducted into this hall, you have to look at the men that are in there now, and the other 4 inductees. Johnny Schneider, and the records show that he could do it all. He wasn't just a bull rider. Reg Kessler, what a man. Stock contractor and a real cowboy. And Lewis Feild, another great friend. And what a hand he's been, and he continues to be. Deb Copenhaver, a real legend. Continues to spread the word of God. What a noble thing to do. And a real great man. I'm pleasured to meet him. A hero of mine for years. But there's more to that. There's the people that are in there now: Casey, Bill Smith, Sean Davis, great bronc riders, all of them. The list goes on. In all the events. And no one cowboy can make it alone. It takes the Salinas, Californias, and the other great rodeos, the committees, the stock contractors are the backbone of this industry. And sometimes, Reg, they are forgotten, and they need not be. We have a couple expenses once in a while too, but I haven't had to fix a semi lately, so I guess I've knocked that up on it. It's truly an honor to be part of this hall. And as the commissioner told us a poem last night, that the fellas that started this outfit, they built a bridge over the water for us. And I hope that they continue to keep building that bridge for the cowboys to come. I want to thank probably the real people that should be honored today, along with the cowboys, is the family and the friends and the fans of rodeo. They're really the honorees. They support the whole dang thing. Without the fans and the family that kept you going when you really needed some support. Thank you.
The next inductee, Lewis Feild, all around. Introduction remarks, Grant Tangy.
Bud, you could at least put a set of hobbles on this thing, seeing as Reg started to become untrained. Ladies and gentlemen and friends of the Rodeo Cowboys Association and Louie and all your family, it's a great honor to be here today. To say something about this young man from the state of Utah. We in Utah haven't been known by producing the best cowboys in the world. As you know, he's the only one in there from the state of Utah, and so far, why, the new crop coming up don't look like they're going to get there unless something comes out of some of these young colts coming up. I guess I probably remember Louie all his life. I used to be employed as a cattle buyer for a local packing company. I can remember Louie's grandpa. He was a little man. I don't think he was as tall as Louie. They used to come to stockyards, bring 3 or 4 cows down there, and he always had a little boy with him. Might have been John sometimes, might have been Lou. Louie'd never let go of his grandpa's hand. But I can always remember him. What a quiet, fine-looking little boy he was. Then I next remember him in 4-H. Around the state of Utah, my boy Ty was very active in 4-H clubs around the state, showing steers and that. Louie was there. But the first time I really remember him as a cowboy was at a high school rodeo in Lehigh, Utah. He was in the bulldogging. Great, big, stout kid, weighed probably 120 pounds. He backed his horse in the box, nodded for the steer, and just sat there. For a minute, I thought he was just scoring his horse. Pretty soon, here he come, a whipping and spurring. Don't think he caught up. But I talked to him about that sometime later. He says, you know, Grant, he says, nobody ever told me that you're supposed to start your horse before that barrier flipped. He says, I thought if you did, you'd break it. Louie learned to be a cowboy the hard way. He was a bashful little boy. He didn't want to go ask somebody for some advice for fear they might not give it to him. But he did learn the hard way. He started out bulldogging on the neighbor's Holstein steers out in the pasture, many times probably after dark, so nobody'd see him. But then I really got to know him after he got out of college. He and my son were roommates in college. I'll never forget to come home after Louie graduated from Weber State, where they'd been team members of the Weber State rodeo team, and I think it was on the 4th day of June. My boy Ty says to his mom, he says, Mom, can Louie stay with us a couple of days? She says, sure. He went home Christmas Eve. Stayed there all day long at his home and was back Christmas night. We welcomed him back. He treated my wife with great respect and me, just like I was his dad. He was always a gentleman. But I remember that summer all them 2 kids did was rodeo and hunt. I don't know how much hunting they did, but they killed a lot of game. I don't know if it was roadkill or what, but they'd come home with something. I also never forget Louie's first big win in the PRCA rodeo. My boy was doing the entering. He messed up somehow, or something was wrong. I can't remember, but it was in Malad, Idaho, and Louie thought he was in the Bronc riding. They didn't take permits or something when they got up there. Anyway, he wound up in the bareback riding, and he drew the rank one, the one that'd been throwing everybody off. Now, Louie didn't read the script. He didn't know that you're supposed to fall off of them stock contractors' rank ones. If it had been Reg's, he'd probably been mad. But he'd have also probably been happy for the kid. Well, like I say, Louie didn't read that he was supposed to fall off, and he just reared back and hold about 80 points out of this horse and win the bareback riding. A superstar was born that night at the Oneida County Fair and Rodeo in Malad, Idaho. kind of got all downhill from that time on. He came home. Next year he was a rookie bareback rider of the year. The rest of it's history. He drew that same horse 3 or 4 years later at the national finals. He went around on him at Oklahoma City too. I guess the next great thing that happened to that young man was to meet a beautiful young blonde girl and marry her. I'll tell you what, she didn't hurt him. I don't know if she needed more money or something, but he kept riding better. Everywhere he went, he got to win a little more. And I tell you what, there's no way that he could have chose a better mate than that little blonde bombshell that he's married to. Everybody loves her, and she treats everybody like they are somebody. I guess we're all really proud of you, Louie, for the things you've won. But I guess what we're more proud of is for the way you wore your crown. You still wear the same size hat that you did before you ever won a dime. I think all cowboys, all champions are that way. I think God made them that way, because he knew that the only one that they was going to be able to negotiate the contract with was themselves. So they no sense of making them too cocky. They had to trade with this themselves. Deb, I can remember when Deb won his first world championship. I was a weekend cowboy, go to rodeos in Utah and Wyoming and Idaho. And I can remember the first time Deb Copenhaver spoke to me is behind the buck and chutes at Ogden, Utah, and I thought God had spoke to me. But you know, after he won the championship, his head didn't get bigger either. The next years after that, he was more friendly than he was before he was the champion. It's the way of a rodeo cowboy. I've heard Bob Tallman say 2 or 3 times about Lewis Feild, this kid is all cowboy, from his head to his toes. That's a great tribute. I think if you looked in the dictionary under cowboy, you'd see his picture. That should be the definition of a cowboy. But I guess more than being a cowboy, he's become a man. An incident happened about 4 years ago up in Tremont in Utah. I don't know if Louie will even remember it or not, when he grew to be 10 feet tall in my eyes. Ty, my boy, came to me and said, "Dad, you want to go to the rodeo with us?" And I said, "Yeah, I wouldn't mind." So I hopped in the pickup with him. We all headed to Tremont. Louie's in the bronc riding, bareback riding, of course, and the team roping. During the team roping, the box was pretty close to the grandstand, and I walked down there and I seen an old boy that I was wanting to buy some yearling steers off of, so I struck up a conversation with him. And while I was standing there, a young mother carried a boy, I think he was probably 5 or 6 years old, down. Couldn't walk. Sat him down there, pretty close to me, and I heard him say, "Mom, that's really him. That's really the all-around champion of the world." It kind of got me. I looked at the little boy and I walked over to him and I said, "Son, would you like to meet him?" He said, "Oh no, I just want to get close to him." So I jumped off over the grandstand, walked over to Louie, and I said, "Louie, you need to go sign a program for that little boy over there." I don't know what he said to him, I don't know what he wrote. Don't matter. But I walked back over and proceeded my cattle trade with this old boy. And pretty soon this woman walked up to me and says, "Mister, I don't know who you are." She had tears in her eyes that big as a quarter. But she says, "You just made a little boy's lifelong dream come true." I says, "It wasn't me, man, it was Louie." And I thought to myself, "Louie, you are indeed the champion of the world." I guess when it's all said and done, you know, Louie, you're going to be proud of your trophies, your belts, buckles, your saddles, and your bronzes, and everything you won. But when you make that ride that Clem and all them announcers talk about that's inevitable up there on the other side, you're not going to take any of them with you. I want you to remember that. What you're going to take with you is the friends that you made. I'm sure there's going to be a different judging system up there. I don't know for sure, but our belief is that we are going to be judged again. And I'd like to think in my mind that it might be on one side the kind of father and the husband that you've been. And on the other side, it might be the way you've treated your fellow man. I know there's only going to be one judge. But I tell you what, little buddy, I think you're going to finally make 100 points. You'll get 50 on each side. I guess I'm a little prejudiced, but I'm sure if I was a judge, that's the way it'd be. Louie, I'm going to speak for all the people in the state of Utah, from the governor on down, how proud we are of you. The way you've represented your name, your family, your friends, your state, and your maker. You've been a great champion. You're going to be greatly missed at the National Finals Rodeo as a contestant. But you're going to be there as a producer. The Reg Kessler aren't going to die as long as the Louie Feilds are still along to come in. Louie, you've made a jillion friends at both ends of the arena. You know, and like I say, that judging, it isn't going to be how you marked out Classic Velvet or finished the ride on Try Me or something like that, or made that 5-second run in the team roping. You're a 3-event man, as everybody knows. You won the Linderman Award 3 times. Not everybody can do that. It is going to be the way you handle yourself, and the way you have handled yourself as a champion. You're going in business. I'm just proud of you. I just wish that your dad could be here today, but somehow I think he's up there sitting on a trail somewhere with some old boys and saying, that's my boy down there. I'm going to give you one little bit of advice, Louie. Honesty will make you, and greed will break you. Don't ever forget that. Good luck. God bless you, you and your family, for everything you've accomplished and everything you will. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Lewis Feild.
The plaque shall read, Lewis Feild all around. Feild, a PRCA member since 1980, started his rodeo career as a youngster. He went on to compete in the National High School Rodeo Association, qualifying for the finals 3 times. He attended college on a full rodeo scholarship and qualified for the National Intercollegiate Finals 3 years in saddle bronc, bareback, and team roping. In 1985, Feild became the first rough stock cowboy since Larry Mahan in 1973 to win the all-around title. He was also the first rough stock contestant to hit $1 million in career earnings, taking only 10 years to do so. His prowess in both the rough stock and timed events won him the Distinguished Linderman Award in 1981, 88, and 1991. He is quoted as saying, someday when rodeo people look back at what I've done, I'd like them to say these things, that I rode tough, I could ride with pain and courage, that I was a fierce competitor in the arena, but a quiet and respectable man outside the gate. I just want to be remembered as a cowboy. That probably says it all, unquote. Born Salt Lake City, Utah in 1965, PRCA World Champion all-around in 1985, 86, and 87, PRCA World Champion bareback in 85 and 86, PRCA Rookie of the Year bareback in 1980. Lewis Feild, all around.
Well, thank you very much. It's sure an honor to be here today. I think it was one of the biggest surprises of my life when Mike Warner called me this spring and telling me that I was being inducted into the Hall of Champions. I thought, boy, I don't know, this seemed a little early for such an honor. I wasn't even quite sure if I'd quit yet, but I guess I have now. But it sure is an honor to be here today. I think the biggest honor of it all is when you look around and see the guys that I'm going in there with and the people that are already in there. I just never did really size myself up with them kind of guys, and it just really is an honor. I'd like to ask my family if they'd stand up today and thank them all for coming over here. They've been a really big support of mine all through my career, and if Veronica and my mom and all my relatives, if they could stand up, and Shad and Mac, the sun's about got to them today. Thank you. And I'd like to thank Grant for all the kind words he said. He's kind of been watching over me all along. Him and Ty are really good friends of mine, and some people that I've always had an awful lot of respect for. And I'd like to thank Veronica. It's like Grant said, I was going along rodeoing and doing pretty good, but it didn't seem like things really did kick into gear until Veronica come along, and she's sure been a lot of support for me. It just seemed like it didn't really matter when I went and rode if I won anything or not. She's always going to be there when I come back, and it sure made things a lot easier that way. I'd also like to thank the good Lord for making this all possible today. I don't know, it's sure a pretty day here today, and I'm sure that He's responsible for all of us being here today. When I was looking at that program, it said who was going to induct you and all that, and then it said on the end their comments, and I don't know, I'm not very good at really speaking about the same feeling as I got in my stomach today when there's one more left at the national finals, and all you know is you got to do is ride and to be world champion. That's kind of how I feel today, and I'd just like to thank you all for coming and supporting us here, and if it wasn't for all you and to come to these things, it wouldn't be worth it at all. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Louie. Thank you. I don't know about you, but I'm not sure I could take too many more inductees today. This has been a great day for this rodeo and for this community, and we appreciate your attendance today. You've been a part of something. Thank you, please. Mike, you and your staff have done an outstanding job, and for many of you know that this is Mike's last induction ceremony, moving off into private business here in the community. He and Eileen have a very fine career, I'm sure, and we've really appreciated all that you've done for the Hall of Fame, Michael, in the time that you've been here. Many of the things that are happening today are your responsibility, you and your staff, and you've set a standard for them that we'll continue on for years to come. And I would like to ask all of you to please recognize Mike with a nice round and joyous round of applause for his contribution to the Hall. As I said in my introductory comments, this is a special day. You are part of some special moments and some special feelings. Many of you will take away many different kinds of thoughts today, but I hope for our inductees this will be one of the special days in their lives. I know that they have so many great accomplishments and they have so many friends and their family and loved ones, but for those who are here today to honor these people, I hope it's something they'll remember for a long time. As we have every year, we take just a moment of silent recognition for one who is not with us today. And I would ask that you would rise in acknowledgement of Johnny Schneider for a moment of private recognition. Thank you. Please remain standing. Ladies and gentlemen, my heartfelt thanks to you for your attendance today and participation in these special moments. Michael, would you close it out for us, please?
I want to take my hat off to the Hall of Famers. Congratulations. You deserve it. You now are members of a very elite group of individuals in the sporting world. You are Hall of Famers. Congratulations.